Hey, help support the show by joining the Patreon or becoming a YouTube member. Also, hit that like button to subscribe if you want more Cavs-focused content. Hey, what's up, YouTube? It's been a minute since I've uploaded on this channel, mainly because I've been doing a lot of prep for the Senior Bowl, which is why the background looks like this and not the background that I usually have. I'm in Mobile, Alabama, watching Senior Bowl practice. If you want to know more about that, subscribe to the football channel. But you're here for the Cavs stuff, so let's talk about the Cavs stuff, because the Cavs have gone through what has to be the lowest point so far of the season. And I think it's important to point out that in the big picture, the Cavs losing 3 games in a row wasn't really that big of a deal. They ended up winning against Detroit and winning convincingly versus Detroit a few days later. But it does let us know, right? It does pop a hole in the bubble of thinking that everything going on with the Cavs was perfect, because that's where we were for a while. Was like the team was winning so much, so often, so easily, that it was easy to kind of tell yourself that it's perfect. But then Evan Mobley gets hurt, and you see George Niang and Tristan Thompson share minutes, and you realize, no, this team is very good, but this team still does have some problems that they need to really find some real solutions to. So 2 weeks ago, when it was brought up, hey, should the Cavs make a trade? I said, no, I don't think the Cavs should make a trade. Now it feels like you have more of an excuse to make a trade. If you're the Cavs, like, this feels like a reason to make a trade. You saw this team struggle with length. Evan Mobley's out, and then all of a sudden the 3-point shooting for the other teams goes crazy. There's a lot of reason to believe that the Cavs should make a move here. They definitely should be players in the buyout market. One name that I've heard people, and when I say people, I'm specifically referring to Tony Pesta, who has routinely pushed this take out. And this is a take I agree with, which the Cavs should try to go get Kevin Love back, because him as a backup big who can shoot, who could space the floor, and like Kevin Love, not as terrible at defense as people have made him out to be. One-on-one defender, he's not great, but if he's not going to be out there with the first team, I think defensively he's fine, because he's a solid team defender. But yeah, just having somebody, a backup big that can space the floor, I mean, I think that's better than George Niang. In trusting George Niang in playoff minutes. I asked the open question a couple weeks ago, do you trust George Niang in the playoffs? I think the answer for me is a definitive, no, I don't think I trust him in the playoffs. So I don't want to go into the playoffs with George Niang minutes hanging over my head. And like every single lineup that the Cavs run, every 8-man rotation the Cavs have right now, you have to put George Niang on the floor, because he's the only big that you can bring off the bench that can also space, right? You bring Tristan Thompson off the bench, he's not going to space. The Cavs, for what they do, need to space the floor. You need to get a spacer. If you don't get a better spacer than George Niang, then George Niang is a spacer. And then ultimately, if you bring back Kevin Love, if you're worried about messing up the chemistry, that's not going to be a problem. Because Kevin Love's already been here with this group. He has a great relationship with Darius Garland, a great relationship with Evan Mobley. I would assume a pretty good relationship with Donovan Mitchell, even though he wasn't here that long with Donovan Mitchell. And it just makes sense, right? Like, it feels like right. Like Tristan Thompson being in a Cavs uniform just makes sense. I think Kevin Love being back in the Cavs uniform makes a ton of sense here. So I think that makes sense for one of the issues the Cavs have, which is, hey, man, we got to get rid of these George Niang minutes. The second thing I think the Cavs need to figure out is a wing, right? Because right now they're leaning on Dean Wade, and he's the second guy you have to ask the question. Do you trust Dean Wade to, one, stay healthy in the playoffs, and two, do you trust Dean Wade to be as effective as he is in the regular season in the playoffs. And for me, I'm leaning towards the answer being no on that for not for George, but well, yes, for George, but also for Dean Wade, right? Like the consistency hasn't been what I wanted. There are moments where Dean's fine. I think you need to go get a wing. Cam Johnson's been a name that's been thrown out. I don't know if you're going to be able to make a trade because the Cavs just don't have much to trade. And I don't think anybody's so desperate that they're going to take the pennies the Cavs have to offer as far as like trade compensation goes. We have like a first round pick in 2031 to trade and Karis LeVert. It's not really the most attractive package we could put together. So if you're trying to trade and you're the Cavs, it probably makes sense to kind of cross your fingers and hope the buyout market has you with a wing, but that's a really, really tough gamble, right? Like can you find a wing better than Dean Wade there? I don't know. Like last year you got Marcus Morris, which wasn't terrible, at least on the court. I know some of the players had issues with him, but yeah, you got to find something, right? You got to add some pieces here, small pieces to the rotation. Other questions I think people have about the Cavs. Donovan Mitchell, like, is this him just taking a step back to make sure the offense is better? Or is this a player who has relied on athleticism his whole career? Somebody whose jump shot is based on how high in the air he can get? Is this him slowing down in his efficiency as a scorer, right? Because there's been a couple moments where the Cavs have needed Donovan Mitchell to kind of get into that mode, and he didn't. Like the one game where Darius Garland misses the 3 free throws in the end, everybody jumps on Darius Garland's back for that performance. But Darius was the one player of the two that was actually doing anything effective in the fourth quarter. Donovan Mitchell was 0 for 6 in the fourth quarter of that game. And it's not the first time that's happened where the Cavs need Donovan to kind of get into that gear and he hasn't been able to switch into it as fast as possible. Now, there's obviously been moments where Donovan has been the closer, been able to do what you expect. But like, is he going to be able to be relied upon to turn that gear on is another question I think a lot of people have. But that's what I want to do. I want to talk about the Cavs real quick because I'm in Mobile. I'm at Senior Bowl practice all day. I'm talking a lot of football right now, so I don't really have the time to talk Cavs. So I want to make sure I get some Cavs in on this trip. You guys have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.